नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नंदनाय च नंदगोपकुमाराय गोविंदाय नमो नमः। ओम अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनच्छलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं सागरजातं सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं प्रजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेशा गोपिकांत राधाकांत नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी शुभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिय। वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। ओम विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण प्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमती राधानाथ स्वामी। ओम विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण परिष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमती भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवी गौरवाणी चारिणे चात्य देशतारिणे मुखम करोति वाचालं पंगुं लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारिणं परमानंद माधवं श्री चैतन्य ईश्वरं हरि ओम। Hare Krishna. Thank you for joining. We are continuing our discussion on the Srimad Bhagavat, the pastimes of Prahlad Maharaj. We'll be discussing chapter 6 of the 7th canto tonight. This chapter is entitled Prahlad instructs his demoniac schoolmates. So, this chapter is a class by Prahlad Maharaj to his friends. So, perhaps this is the youngest as well as the earliest Bhagavatam class. This is one 5-year-old boy explaining the essence of the Bhagavad philosophy to a class full of 5-year-olds, and not just uh, you know a by-hearted 5-year-old boy who has by-hearted a particular something to speak, but a perfectly self-realized Mahabhagavat who's giving transcendental wisdom out of compassion to all his school friends. If you recollect, in our last discussion, where we completed chapter 5, after many attempts to kill Prahlad had failed, eventually Shanda and Amarka approached the frustrated Hiranyakashipu, who had become helpless, hopeless, and fearful. Don't worry, he's just a boy. Huh? After all, he's not trying to kill you. You are proactively trying to kill him. Why you are so worried? He's just a boy. Right now, maybe his intelligence is a little uh, distorted. Sometimes in this age it happens. So, don't need to worry too much. Just let us take care of it over some years. Like small boys sometimes catch a fancy, and parents don't take that fancy too seriously at a very young age, because they know as the child grows, he will forget all these childish things. So this nonsense about Vishnu worship, we don't know where he got it from, but it will gradually get dropped away. Don't worry. Somehow Hiranyakashipu also kind of consoled himself. Of course, he didn't have an option. It's not that he had 10 options. Okay, I mean, because Hiranyakashipu was fearful, that if he persisted in his efforts to persecute Prahlad, he could understand that Prahlad is being protected by a higher power than himself. Because I cannot do anything. Even the greatest of devatas are fearful, and I with all my Ashtasiddhis and all the benedictions that Brahmaji has given, I cannot even scratch Prahlad's body. So he was worried that, Lord Vishnu's will may get implemented with great force and he may die sooner than what would have otherwise happened. So he said, Baba, let me not overdo this. Maybe it may get solved in a different way. So he temporarily backed out. He had no option anyways. He decided to back out. And Chanda and Amarka took Prahlad back to school. And as usual, they were working on him. Prahlad, he had already told them, you're teaching nonsense, I'm not interested. But he was not an argumentative boy. He wouldn't be criticizing his teachers. He was very respectful externally. Told what he had to. But he would just sit in class and carry on. And, the teachers, Shanda and Amarka and other teachers would go on with the Artha, Dharma, Kama, politics, friend, enemy, all this business. And Prahlad, as usual, disinterested, but just quietly sitting through class. But internally, always continuously meditating on the Supreme Lord. So this is one of the special things of Prahlad. Prahlad Maharaj is a Mahajan who personifies the process of Smaranam. Prahlad Maharaj himself, in the previous chapters we discussed, right? When Hiranyakashipu asked him, what is the greatest education? What is the best thing you have learned? He said, these 9 processes of bhakti, to worship the Supreme Lord, are the essence of all education. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnoho, Smaranam Pada Sevanam, Archanam Mandanam Dasyam Sakyam Atmani Vedanam. So Prahlad Maharaj himself is the epitome of Smaranam. Because he was always perfect in his meditation on the Supreme Lord. That is why throughout this entire episode of Hiranyakashipu's repeated attempts to assassinate Prahlad, trying to burn him, through whatever else that he did, Prahlad wasn't trying to actively save himself. He wasn't doing something, he wasn't, jumping, doing some kung fu, taking out some weapons and counteracting. He was dependent on the Lord. I am just a 5-year-old boy, whatever the Lord wants. He would always be in the sense of full dependence on the Lord, fully be absorbed in remembering. That was his caliber. Of course, for us, if we are in difficult situations, we should use our intelligence and do whatever way we can think to, counteract. And there's nothing wrong with that. Simultaneously, we should depend on the Lord. But the caliber of the faith of Prahlad was so perfect, and his meditation on the Lord was so perfect, and his realization of Krishna consciousness was so perfect, that never a thought even came that I must do some endeavor. He said, God will take care of everything. So perfect. It's very difficult for a person in situations like this to remain calm, first of all. When we put into very difficult situations, the first thought comes in our mind is, oh Krishna, I did so much devotion to you. Why you did this to me? Prahlad wasn't into this kind of things. Even Jesus Christ, Prabhupada said, when he was on the cross, for a moment, he said, oh Lord. And this is written in the Bible. This is not, ISKCON interpretation. The Lord, why have you forsaken me? Why have you abandoned me? Basically meaning, why you allowed this to happen? So it is very difficult when faced with deep, difficult, challenging, painful situations. But Prahlad was perfect in his consciousness. Anyway, net, we already discussed how Prahlad was back in school. He was in perfect consciousness. He was attending, but he was perfectly in Krishna consciousness. And Chanda and Amarka were thinking, oh, maybe our education is slowly working on him. Slowly we are brainwashing. So just like demoniac people think devotees are brainwashing people, uh, demons were trying to brainwash Prahlad. This nonsense of Krishna consciousness has entered into the head of Prahlad. Uh, I know when I was very, very young, sorry, I just remembered something. Uh, I was spiritually, I don't remember what that my age was at that time, but perhaps 10, 11, something like that. And I was not in contact with devotees, but I was reading spiritual books. I was also reading Prabhupada books and chanting occasionally and things like that. And my parents are already worried. What is wrong with this boy? You know, uh, because I would be very odd in that regard. So once an astrologer had come to our home, and I was a small boy. I mean, even though I was 10 is not really so big. So my mother showed my horoscope to him and said, "Ah, yeah, I can see. Yes, this boy has so and so spiritual aspects in his chart, and there is I can see that he's detached from material life." And so on. So, and they were speaking in front of me because they're thinking I'm just a boy, even though I was understanding everything. You have to do something in such a way that we, crush his renunciation and make him attached to materialistic life. Something to that effect. I don't remember the exact words. Just kind of sitting and listening and feeling amused, you know. So anyway, I asked him a few other things. There was some interesting conversation he had. He told me some few things very interesting, but we don't have time for that. But that is the nature of a materialistic mentality. Crush any sense of devotion, renunciation. Real good life you can have when you have materialistic goals and you work hard towards achieving them. And after achieving them, show the flag of your success to all your friends, relatives, society. Hari bol, I did it. Uh, I am rich. I am successful. I am happy. You all are nothing. See how great I am. I mean, net and material life is like that. And Krishna explains this in the Bhagavad Gita also. So they were thinking, oh, Prahlad, something is working on Prahlad. But actually, there was Prahlad was least interested or affected. So something interesting would happen. They were thinking everything is okay, but things are not okay. Because whenever Shanda and Amarka would go away after lessons, in between periods, when they would have time, when typically the children of 5 years old, they would go out to play in the recess. The friends of Prahlad would tell Prahlad, come, 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 Prahlad, let's play. Prahlad was so dear to his friends. They were all, pure devotees, so attractive, and he was so gentle and loving. And the son of the king. So, and Prahlad would say, no, no, I'm not interested. No, no, come, come, come. And when they would insist so much, Prahlad would tell them, why are you all getting distracted by all this? Please, my suggestion and request to you, my dear friends, is don't get carried away by this materialistic way of life that you are being taught to follow. And then Prahlad said something like this, a 5-year-old boys. And they heard something like this from Prahlad. And they had great respect for Prahlad. They had great affection for Prahlad. And they all gathered around Prahlad. They were very curious to hear what Prahlad had to say. So Prahlad is sitting here, just imagine in the classroom, and all these children are sitting around him as if Prahlad is now the teacher and they are all the students. And the first question, even though it is not mentioned in the verse here, Prabhupada often says this. Prabhupada has written a book on this chapter, the teachings of Prahlad Maharaj. This chapter is that. The book is based on this chapter, teachings of Prahlad Maharaj. Because this chapter is nothing but the Bhagavatam class given by Prahlad. Whole chapter. It's not a very long chapter. It's less than 30 verses. So the children were apparently asking, Prabhupada would say, oh, we are just 5 years old. Why you want to talk about big things, philosophy and spiritual life? We're talking about materialistic life. We should become spiritual. Huh? Can we do all that later? Let's have a good time now. We are children after all. Let's play. So Prahlad Maharaj starts his class with a very, very strong verse. Now, this particular chapter, if you actually read through the verses, it is Prahlad Maharaj's instructions are so heavy and so laden and so direct and blunt about the futility of material existence and the desperate need to take immediate shelter of the Supreme Lord. It's very heavy class. I mean, it's interesting that 5-year-old boys sat through this class. Probably because they were intensely curious about what Prahlad had to say. That Prahlad was not interested in this kind of mundane playing. It's very curious, isn't it? I mean, if we find somebody who's very different in our class, we're interested, what exactly is his thinking? What is his belief that he's behaving like this? And this happens in the lives of all of us devotees, right? Our friends, our relatives. At some point, they want to catch us and corner us and try to find out what is going on in our life that we have become so different after coming in contact with Krishna consciousness. So Prahlad starts with a very, very powerful verse. And Prabhupada has quoted this verse across his lectures many times. Because Prabhupada would quote Prahlad Maharaj so often. Because Prahlad Maharaj's teachings are so potent. Prahlad Maharaj says, Kaumaram acharet pragyo dharman bhagavatan iha sudurlabham manusham janma tad api adhruvam arthadam. Prabhupada would often say, Kaumaram acharit pragyo, Prahlad Maharaj said. What does that mean? Don't think that spiritual life is for later years, after retirement program. Kaumaram acharit pragyo, one who is intelligent, should start practicing this Bhagavad Dharma, Dharma Bhagavataniha, this Bhagavad Dharma that I'm about to explain to you from the Kaumar age. What is Kaumar age? 5 years. Not after 55, 65, no, 5. Now, why he says this? Of course, in the next line, he gives a brief explanation. Prahlad Maharaj says, human life itself is so rare. And even when one attains this rare human form of life, it is not very long, it is just 100 years. And this human life is meant for the topmost attainment. There isn't much time. You have to quickly take full benefit of the opportunity that human life gives. And 5 years is the best time to start. Why? Because in very early years of one's life, whatever values we instill in our heart, a child, whatever values are instilled in the heart, continue to remain as the main values guiding the life of that child for the rest of his life. This is not only said by the Bhagavatam, but even modern psychology also confirms this. They say that whatever values a child instills in his life, and that depends on what he hears, what he sees around him, how his parents behave, what kind of teachings and instructions they give, what is the culture at home, what is the culture in society, what is the culture in whatever kindergarten he goes to. He's so impressionable that his main character and value formation happens up to the age of 7. This is what science says, even material sciences. Of course, we base our knowledge on the Bhagavad, but even material science agrees in this regard. So two things. Best to form the right values early rather than later. So start very young. Second is human life is so short. Why you want to start late? It's already small and you start late, you don't have much time to do anything. And by that time to start building your character and values aligned with spiritual understanding is very difficult. Because to change one's values significantly is challenging work after that age. Not impossible. I think it's impossible, but it's challenging. Sudurlamam manusham janma tad api adhruvam arthadam. One should not live one's precious human form of life. Prabhupada would often say like a dog or a hog, just anxious for materialistic enjoyments. So one should begin the process of Shravanam Kirtanam that Prahlad Maharaj has been explaining since very early age. Otherwise, like Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, the risk of falling back to lower life forms is very real. And if one performs even a little bit of devotional service in one's human form of life, swalpam api asya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. One will be saved from the most dangerous fear. What is the most dangerous fear? Fear of losing the human form and going into a lower form of life. That's why the scripture says simply by human form of life, especially in Kali Yuga, simply by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Namaiva Kevalam Kalau Nastaiva. In this short life, in this one life, in Kali Yuga, if one dedicates oneself for this life, not towards the end, but from the beginning, one lives a life, a pure life. Of course, for us, we all came to Krishna consciousness at different points. So now there isn't an opportunity to rewind back. But at least for the next generation, we can. We spend the life cultivating Krishna consciousness. And if you have the right values, because if you have the right values in childhood, we will not gather so much rubbish that when we come to spiritual life later, we have so much undoing to do. You agree? Correct? Sometimes, some of us feel, Prabhu, one devotee was telling me today from our class, only I wish I could have come to Krishna consciousness. So much time wasted. And also, even though he didn't say it, so much garbage gathered in the process for each of us. Wrong association, wrong impressions, wrong activities. And when we come to Krishna consciousness, we have to then work to undo all that damage. So better to start with. That's why, even though he doesn't mention here, Prahlad Maharaj, that's why getting birth in the family of devotees is a very, very special benediction. Prahlad Maharaj says even a little bit of devotional service performed can actually really help one progress close towards the Supreme Personality of God. Prahlad Maharaj tells his children, tells his friends, all these children, very special chance, my dear friends, please understand. This human life that you have got is such a wonderful opportunity to go back to God. And this opportunity can be easily availed in this human form of life by engaging in devotional service to Lord Vishnu's lotus feet. And my dear friends, do not think, is it? Sorry, Santanam Prabhu is saying that he's not able to hear. Is it so? Are the others able to hear?
It's okay for me.
It's okay, yeah? Okay. Okay, maybe a temporary disturbance on his side. Okay, thanks. Thanks, Amit Prabhu. So he says that actually this is not so difficult. Why? Sometimes, people think that, oh, becoming a devotee is so complicated, difficult. No, actually, Prahlad Maharaj says this is the most natural thing. To become materialistic is unnatural. To become a devotee of Vishnu is most natural, because he's the soul of all souls. Who is more closer to us than the Supreme Lord, right? We think my parents are most close to me. But the Lord in his form of Paramatma is accompanying the living entity, the soul sitting just next to him in the core of one's heart since time immemorial, always accompanying the soul and being a witness and guiding him and helping him at every step. He's already our beloved. He's already the master of our soul. It is actually so natural to turn to him. Oh, my dear friends, don't think this is difficult business. Actually, devotional service is natural. Materialistic life, which you are being trained to by Shanda, Amarka, and others in this university of demoniac training, is actually unnatural. And my dear friends, the happiness that we all are seeking, the end goal is still to be happy. The end goal that we all are seeking cannot be achieved by the path that is being taught in our school. This materialistic way of life. Because all that our school is teaching us is how we can try to enjoy this world by increasing or maximizing sense enjoyment. This sense enjoyment, which is nothing but a product of the sense objects coming in contact with the senses, is actually very tuchha. It's very insignificant. It's actually a cause of misery. Dukkha yonaya evate, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. And my dear friends, is this kind of enjoyment of the senses and the sense objects not available in other species of life? Look at all these animals around us in the forest. Aren't they also enjoying in the same way? Is human life, which is such an evolved intellect, meant for these kind of activities? Certainly not. Huh? If we want to sleep, better we become a polar bear. If you want to eat a lot, better be an elephant. If we want unlimited sex life, better to be a pigeon. This body is not meant for this. And happiness and distress at a material platform come in all forms of life. And material happiness in this material body is achieved automatically also based on one's past karma, just like one attains misery. This is also a very famous statement of Prahlad Maharaj. He says, why are we chasing happiness? Happiness will come to us. Are you chasing misery? Do you have to go looking for misery, 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 and then misery meets you? Yes, 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 Prabhu, I have come, shake hand. You are looking for me for all this while. All our life, we are trying to run away from misery. But Mr. Misery knows our address exactly, and it already knows the appointment that it has in our life. It will come exactly when it has to come. The right proportion according to our karmic results. So Prahlad Maharaj is saying, if bad karma is coming our way without seeking it forcefully, won't, won't our happiness, whatever is our prarabdha according to the body based on our past karma also come? Why are we making so much extraordinary effort? And if it is just a matter of maintaining this body, do we need so much endeavor just to maintain this body? Prahlad Maharaj doesn't make this statement explicitly, but essentially what he's saying is basic things that we need for our sustenance are easily available. They do not need so much hard labor where one wastes the precious human form of life in a lot of over endeavor for sense enjoyment. Because that will simply cause loss of time and loss of energy and not actually give any happiness. But if one focuses one's energy on Krishna consciousness, one can certainly progress and even attain self realization. All this economic liberation, dharma, artha, kama, not only is it like chasing a mirage, which doesn't give any real satisfaction to the soul, but also please understand all that you gather in this world, when you die, reset to zero. But not so for spiritual credits. Therefore, an intelligent person, my dear friends, should not chase after these kind of things, which are not only sources of misery, not only not going to give us happiness, but are going to disappear. Must have the discrimination to understand what is right and what is wrong, and actually work towards the real goal of life. And we must work hard and attain this real goal of life when we still have healthy bodies. We are still young and we'll remain young for some time, but eventually old age will catch up with us. Our body, which is stout and strong now, will one day become dwindled. Right now, as children, some of you may be laughing at old people. Huh? But that time is not very far away where we will also be in that situation. Just think about it, my dear friends. Just 100 years of life. Huh? Shatayurvai Purushaha. The Vedas say 100 years. Nowadays, even 100 years is very difficult. But let us go by 100 years calculation because Prahlad Maharaj makes that assessment. He says 50% of it is lost in sleeping. So all you have is only 50 years left. Maximum 100 years. 50 years lost in sleeping because one is in the mode of ignorance and asleep. The first 20 years of life are also lost. First 10 years in play as a child, and another 10 years in studying and other things, growing up. 20 years gone. 20 years in the beginning of life, and the last 20 years of life, one is too old to do anything of any significance. One's senses are weak, one is struggling with health issues. So out of 100, 40 years are gone. So remaining is 60 in the middle. And out of 60, half the time is left is uh, exhausted and sleeping. So net, all you have is 30 years to do something productive with your life. That's why I'm saying it's a short life. And people are just wasting their life away. Because of their uncontrolled lusty desires. I told my father also the same thing. People who have uncontrolled lusty desires, they're chasing continuously material pursuits, and they are uh, like blind being led by the blind, both falling into a ditch. So persons who are too attached to sense enjoyment, and in the society, the anchor of material enjoyment is materialistic household life. Because materialistic household life represents the principle of I, me, and mine. Myself and expanded egoistic sense enjoyment. I am there, my beautiful wife is there, my wonderful children are there, my wonderful bungalow, my name, my fame, my glory, my attainments. One is so busy and always chasing after materialistic pursuits in this world. How can he actually control his senses, and how will there be a chance for a person to liberate himself? Oh, my dear friends, please tell me. This was already getting very heavy class. I was just wondering in my mind, what the children were thinking as Prahlad was speaking all this. The Bhagavatam doesn't mention. Uh, but they were in some way impressed. Actually, the practical reality is no matter how great a devotee gives, how big a class, the audience barely absorbs 5% of it. That is the reality. I'm talking about an audience who's not very Krishna conscious. Barely absorb. And out of that 5%, they'll remember only 1%. And out of that 1%, 1/10 of the percent, they may occasionally remember and do a little bit something. May. Because at the end of the class, as you will later realize, and we'll come to that in a short while, there were no philosophical questions which the children asked. They didn't ask Prahlad about, oh, you said like this, but then, the last question that they will ask, the one question that they will ask at the end of the class is, where did you learn all this from? Big, big things you are telling. कहाँ से सुना? Shanda and Amarka didn't teach us all this. This is not from our syllabus. From where did you learn all this? So I'm assuming, even though they were kind of impressed, and of course, to some extent, they were influenced by Prahlad and his pure devotion. In fact, they would even do kirtan and the boys would dance occasionally. That was by the influence of the devotion of Prahlad Maharaj. But I wonder how many of them actually could relate the profundity of this message. See, the thing is, spiritual life and especially the concept of futility of material existence cannot be sufficiently appreciated simply by intellectual consideration. Intellectual consideration, yeah, one may say yes, 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 but it will be like water falling on a uh, lotus leaf, which will just slide off. It will not remain. Unless one is actually able to have that spiritual insight based on purification of heart and detachment from material energy, be able to actually appreciate the conclusions and the Siddhanta that Prahlad Maharaj is explaining. Anyway, let's continue with what Prahlad Maharaj said. At least, hopefully, we are in a better position to appreciate at least a little more. At least we are not hearing this for the first time. We have been hearing, many of us have been hearing this for decades already now. Hopefully, it is rubbing off on us more than what it did on the demoniac children. Sorry, not demoniac children, children of the demoniac. So Prahlad Maharaj continues. These attached people, how can they liberate themselves? They are bound by strong bonds of material affection. When one's life is driven by one's attachment because of bodily connections, then that becomes the chief consideration and the driving force for one's activity. Not considerations of dharma, not considerations of liberation. And Prahlad Maharaj gives a very nice statement. He says, for materialistic people, money is sweeter than honey. Money is sweeter than honey. They will work so hard, do all kinds of sacrifice to accumulate this money, especially when they are householders. It is never enough. How many people have said, it is enough? Now I have enough money. Now let me stop and cultivate spiritual life and go to Vrindavan and dedicate myself to the service of the Lord. People are so much after money that sometimes people will even risk their life to earn money. And then Prahlad Maharaj gives three examples. Thieves. Thieves will risk themselves getting caught, but they will steal money. Soldiers. Especially in previous times, there were many mercenaries who would get into the profession of fighting a war by taking wages. And in that way, various armies would be raised. So soldiers are willing to die for money. And merchants. Interesting. How come merchants? It is said in olden times, merchants would take great risk to carry their items of what they wanted to trade on ships and travel far distances. It wasn't easy. It was a very risky thing. Many would die with their boats capsizing and getting killed and robbed by dacoits. So these three, the soldier, the merchants, the thieves, they take so much risk for this money. They treat money more valuable than their life, isn't it? Otherwise, why they are doing this? This money they have to leave behind. Prahlad Maharaj is lamenting. How can people are so attached, whose whole affection, rather than being directed towards the Lord's lotus feet, which is the eternal shelter, instead is reposed in temporary material relationships, and one is bound to those relationships. How can one break away from that attachment? How can one give up that association? How can one give up the association of a wife who's always obliging and serving? How can one give up the association of one's children who are speaking in very sweet words and broken language, which is so pleasing to hear? One's parents, one's family, one's relatives, the community, the furniture, the cars in the garage, all the various decorations, they are all causes of bondage. The attached householder is attached to all these items so much, just like a silkworm is caught up in a cocoon which is spun out its own body in the form of silk, totally wrapped up, cannot come out. And that becomes the cause of its death, isn't it? How can one escape this kind of entanglement? So Prahlad Maharaj tells us, please understand. You think you just want to carry on, want to learn all this, pursue the ordinary materialistic life. Just think how entangled you will get. First, you will have the wrong values. You'll engage in activities which don't give you actual happiness. You'll just gather a lot of karma. You will suffer. You will get attached in materialistic household life. You'll get so trapped. And you will say, I will do spiritual life later. Very difficult. Because if one remains entangled like that, it is not possible. Automatically, at a particular age, one will automatically develop distaste for materialistic life. Doesn't happen. Automatically, age will lead to detachment. Age will lead to weakening of sensual vigor. Yes. Your senses will become weak. Your capacity to enjoy will become weak, but your desire will not disappear. Your attachments will not disappear. And that's important. Just in case any of you are thinking that, in the same way that we just discussed. So it's not going to happen. So what is the hope Prahlad Maharaj is saying in this kind of situation? That's why I'm telling you, don't wait. Huh? Because materialistic life will simply increase the fever of materialistic life. And what is that fever characterized by? This is mine and that is for others. This duality that I've been telling you about, this vision that I've been telling you about, that we are being taught in this school, that this world is for my enjoyment. These are friends and these are enemies. Friends are those who help in your enjoyment, and enemies those who are obstructions in your enjoyment. This kind of logic is all the cause of deep trouble. It is not at all going to help us to attain actual good fortune. So let's not get carried away by what we are being taught here. Let us develop the right values and have a real understanding. Let us not live like cats and dogs who are unable to understand spiritual wisdom and remain covered in ignorance. So my dear friends, love this thing. Unless we acquire spiritual knowledge, unless we really understand who we are not the body, we are the soul, we are an eternal part and parcel of the Lord. And unless we have knowledge about our relationship with the Supreme Lord, we cannot liberate ourselves. That is the knowledge we should be learning. That is why I was telling my father, this is the king of education. Not what we are being taught. Friend, enemy, artha, dharma, kama. That kind of thinking is what is known as demoniac attitude. You are the sons of demons, but you should not follow the demoniac philosophy. You must be careful to not get trapped in this demoniac philosophy. My request and suggestion to you is please keep away from such materialistic persons and take shelter of the Supreme Personality of God and Narayan. Because He is the ultimate goal. He is the ultimate shelter and He is the giver of liberation from material existence. And the Lord is so kind. Sometimes people think how the Lord is far and how we will attain Him. No, He's actually the closest to us. He's the original super soul is sitting in each of our hearts. He loves us. He's the father of all living entities. And actually, there is no impediment, no material impediment to love the Lord. See, I'm sitting here in class in the demoniac, in the capital of Hiranyakashipu, sitting here in class being taught by demoniac teachers, but I have no obstruction in my continuous remembrance of the Supreme Lord. Who can stop me? Krishna consciousness is never obstructed by any material consideration. And this is a very important point for all of us also. Correct? To remember the Lord, to chant His holy name, to hear about Him. Do we need a lot of wealth? No. Huh? Do we need any specific material qualification? No. Do we need a high birth? Do we need a beautiful body? Do we need a high material education? No. That's why devotional service doesn't depend on any material consideration. Whether one is a child or one is an old man, all that one needs is that inclination to worship the Lord, faith in the Lord, affection for the Lord. And it is natural. In fact, that relationship is eternal. It is always that is just covered over. Actually, there is no difficulty, my dear friends. It's so natural for me. Just see, I cannot even forget. I am naturally remembering the Lord. So basically, Prahlad is trying to encourage his friends. This is what I'm trying to tell you is not something far out. What I'm trying to tell you, you don't have to change your material situation. What I'm trying to tell you, you can easily do without obstructing with your day-to-day activities. Of course, you have to still give up your demoniac mentality, but you don't have to stop your education. You don't have to run away from your home. But you have to change your consciousness. You have to change the way you look at things. You have to see things with the eyes of knowledge. See the world with the eyes of knowledge. So please, my dear friends, act in this way. Act in this way, and if you do this, the Supreme Lord will be pleased with you. Give up this kind of demoniac mentality, which is based on enmity and duality. Kind to all living entities. We are all part and parcels of the Supreme Lord. And just like I am enlightening you about devotional service, you can also enlighten others. Not difficult, it is natural. I am teaching you, you go and teach others. And have faith. One who has become a devotee of the Supreme Lord, there is nothing that he cannot attain. Don't think that if I become the Lord and if I don't have a so-called big material attainments, I will not get. No, everything is possible by the grace of the Lord. That's why devotees are not interested in dharma, artha, kama. Dharma, artha, kama are available even for people who are in the lower modes. We devotees are always satisfied in glorifying the lotus feet of the Lord. And we devotees are so satisfied in that, and we have so much faith that the Lord will give us what we lack and protect what we have, that we don't even chase the Lord asking for things related to dharma, artha, kama. The Lord Himself will provide whatever is necessary. So let us not be too excited about the subjects of dharma, artha, kama. That is not the pinnacle of education. That is only a regulated means of leading a life which is more or less animal-like. It's more or less animal-like. Why more or less animal-like? Because the end goal of Artha Dharma Kama is sense enjoyment only, but only in a slightly more regulated way. For the animals, there is no sin because they have no discrimination. But for human beings, there is sin, so there is some regulation needed. So that's what it's putting a framework around. So that's not something too fancy, nothing to be too excited about. That kind of enjoyment is available even to the lower species of life. The Lord is the well-wisher of all of us. So just if you turn even a little bit towards the Lord will come running towards you. So don't be too excited about this material subject. Turn your face towards the Lord. Surrender to the lotus feet of the Lord. And the Lord will quickly reciprocate. Actually, this knowledge that I'm giving you, my dear friends, is actually very special and confidential. And Prahlad Maharaj at this point tells them, actually, it is very difficult to understand. At this point, he tells them, this knowledge is very difficult to understand. Sometimes we speak these things, we hear these things, we think we have understood. But the quality of our consciousness and the quality of our life shows that we haven't understood that much. Maybe a little bit, but we haven't understood that. Because without the mercy of a great devotee, without the blessings of the Lord and the spiritual master, without the mercy of a saintly person like Narada, or a representative of the disciplic succession like Narada, one cannot understand this confidential knowledge. Krishna says, right, to Arjuna, Tad vidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnanam tattvadarshina. I am explaining the spiritual knowledge, but I am giving you quick summary. But if you want to properly learn this, approach a spiritual master, take initiation from him, render service to him, inquire from him submissively. He will instruct you because he has seen the. And then he immediately explains to his friends how come he understood it. So I received the blessings from Narad Muni. He is perfect. He is always engaged in devotional service. This knowledge, which is the Bhagavad Dharma, which is the greatest of all education, which is fully scientific, very logical, the topmost philosophy, which is free from the modes of material nature and free from all contamination. You are asking me, right, where you got this knowledge from? Huh? You were curious, right? Chanda and Amarka never taught us. Huh? Because that was the only question they had at the end of the Bhagavatam class. Where did you learn this? I learned it because I received it from Narada. And I have been able to understand it because I received the proper blessings. So after this, the friends, this is the end of the class. Friends asked Prahlad, Prahlad, nice, interesting, very good. You speak so nice, very well. Your class was very nice, very heavy, but very interesting. You said you learned this from Narad. But as far as we know, you have been born here. I mean, all your life you have been here. When did you get opportunity? You are born also here in this capital. So where did you get the opportunity to hear from Narad Muni? When did you get that association? Please explain that to us. So that brings us to the end of this particular chapter, 30 verses. And this discussion will continue in the next chapter, which is chapter 7. All glories to Prahlad Maharaj. So we'll stop here. Any questions or comments? Yes, Amit Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
This incident happened in the Satya Yuga when the duration of life, I think, was 100,000 years, right? So, so why does in the initial part of the chapter, why does Prahlad Maharaj say that the human beings live for 100 years?
Actually, the way some acharyas explain is the Vedas say Shatayur Vai Purusha. So the experience of time is different, but the duration of life apparently seems to be considered to be 100 years. Let me look at the verse itself. Huh? Whether it uses the word, I think it uses the word 100. An interesting question. Brahma also lives for 100 years, but 100 of his years, and his 1 year is very long. Yeah. So the way it could be considered is that the 100 years in of Satya are different from the 100 years of Rita and Dwapar and Kali. Let me just check whether the word 100 is used in the verse itself. I think it is. So Varsha Shatam, yes, correct. Varsha Shatam. So one of the explanations I have heard is what I just mentioned, and nothing more is mentioned here, so I will not be able to comment. But I would think of it in that way,
Uh,
that on all planetary systems, even the Devatas live for 100 years. But their 100 years for us, each of their day is, our 1 year is 1 day for them. So how exactly this worked in previous yugas, I'm not sure whether the year cycle was going through slower and it is just compared to our time, or how exactly it worked. That's an interesting thing. But yes, Prahlad Maharaj does mention 100 very clearly. Varsha Shatam.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, that's right. I just went to Veda base,
Hmm.
and in the purports, Prabhupada mentions exactly what you have said, Prabhuji, now. So I'm just reading
Okay.
the purport, the two lines of the purport.
Please,
It says,
please.
Brahma, a human being and ant all live for 100 years, but the lifetimes of 100 years are different from one another. This world is a relative world,
Hmm.
and its relative moments of time are different. Thus, the 100 years of Brahma are not the same as 100 years of a human being, and so on. So that is what. So you're right. So I think, uh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so it seems like, yeah, so Brahmaji and the Devatas, I think we are very clear. So it seems even on earth in different yugas, it appears as if uh, you know the time scale is different. So maybe whenever it was mentioned, 10,000 years, 60,000 years, that is being referred to our today's so much period. I'm again, this is a speculation, but it could be something like that. But that's an interesting point. I think this point is worth uh, exploring. I'll try to check with others what is their understanding of this. Yeah, but definitely with respect to all other planetary systems, 100 years is the standard of life. In fact, Prabhupada in other places, and I've heard this from other devotees also, the life not only of humans and devatas and Brahma is 100 years, but even for insects and birds and animals, each species experiences 100 years of time. 100 years doesn't mean 100 rotations of the sun, but their experience of time, because time is a very relative thing, how time is experienced, right? Time is not absolute, time is relative. So on the same planet, a dog who lives 15 years, his 15 years, he experiences 100 years. Like we experience 100 years, a long life. And Prabhupada says in some places that, even there are some insects who are born in the morning, grow up over the day, by evening they die. Their 100 years is that 1 day of ours. So it's very interesting because, the way the bodily processes, the gross and subtle processes work, it affects the perception of time. So, but one thing is true, which I have heard very clearly, is that the experience of time is such that every species, its typical life, is the experience of 100 years that we will experience as humans. That's an interesting thing. But the
Thank
same
you.
humans in other species, maybe that is true for that also. But that I think is a good point to validate. Thank you, Amit Prabhu. Thank you for quoting that. Yeah. Tarun Prabhu, you have something? Tarun, you are on mute. Or is it your wife here? I see two
Hare
Taruns.
Krishna Prabhuji.
Yes.
Yeah, Prabhuji. Actually, I was joining from laptop, but something. Can you hear me, okay,
Oh,
Prabhuji?
yeah, I can hear you. I thought it was Puja
Yeah,
Mataji, but I think she's already there in another connection. Yeah. Go ahead.
yeah, yeah, Prabhuji. Actually, my question is pretty general, and this is in context of Devasur Sangram.
Sorry?
And
What
so I was
context
just
of
Devasur
Devasur Sangram?
Sangram. Yeah. So Prabhuji, I was listening, and one ISKCON Prabhuji's context, and he was sharing that Devasur Sangram was never between Dev and Asur. It is actually between the two Brahmans, which is Shukracharya and Praspati Guruji. And they basically have some kind of conflict, which leads to this Sangram. And if it is really there, means what was that conflict, Prabhuji?
No, there may be a conflict between the Brahmins, but I have never heard for that as the only cause. See, there are many factors which lead to conflict. Correct. So when there is a conflict between two parties, right, then if I have an interest which aligns with one party, I will go to the side of that party, and that could be even because my opposition is on the other side. So there may be, like they say, convergence of interest. My enemy's enemy is my friend. All these are all political considerations that Prahlad Maharaj was saying we shouldn't be doing, but that is the nature of the material world. So I do not know exactly what story he's talking about, but yes, the truth is that Shukracharya was, Shukracharya and Brahaspati had a conflict. That is true. Shukracharya was the guru of the Daityas, and Brahaspati is the guru of the Devatas. But this doesn't necessarily mean that, of course, Shukracharya, once he became the guru of the Daityas, he would, of course, fuel that enmity with the Daityas because he wanted to keep his job alive. Right? Because his job is based on that enmity. So that is the nature of the material world. Nature of the material world is we are not looking for ultimate good. Each person is thinking how my interest will be served. And if perpetuation of enmity will secure my job and my money, you see the whole Western world, especially America, the biggest industry is the arms industry. And so many analysts go on saying that America will be best economic situation if it ensures there are big wars going all around the world. That's good for them. So if it's good for them, why will they not want to create them? Logical question to ask. Why will they want to stop them? So Trump is saying he wants to stop the war. Oh, Biden, everybody is worried. Why do you think stopping the war is bad? Because there is economics linked to it. So human beings become so cruel because of their selfish interest that they're okay for suffering of mankind to perpetuate if it gives them some economic benefit. So this is what happens, and especially amongst the Daityas, this is the mentality. And we spoke about Shukracharya many times, right? We also said that when even Bali Maharaj wanted to surrender to Vishnu, Shukracharya did everything possible to stop him. And in the purpose, Prabhupada says he wanted to stop him because he knew if he gives everything to Vishnu, he will lose his kingdom. I am his chief priest, my job is gone. No king, no kingdom, no Raj Purohit, no income. So he was not thinking, I am a sage, I am a Brahmana, I must tell him what is the right thing to do. So that is why even a Brahmana, a teacher who becomes attached to wealth, that's why Brahmana ideally should not depend on anybody. If he becomes attached to wealth, he cannot speak the truth. He cannot give knowledge as it is. They may be expert in rituals. They may be able to guide in terms of power and doing rituals and this and that. But that is not the ultimate purpose of Brahmana. Brahmajanat iti Brahman. He who is conversant in spiritual truth is a Brahman. So net, there may be many factors. There may have been a conflict and they may have kept the conflict alive. But this is an eternal principle in the material world. Daiva and Asura. So rather than saying Devata and Asura, let us just say Sura and Asura. Sura, even people on this earth can be Suras in a broader sense. Those who are Vishnu Bhakta Smruta Daiva Asura Tad Vipareya. I have quoted this verse many, many times. Those who are devoted to the Lord, who follow the system, who follow and are devoted to the Lord, are Sura. And those who are opposed to the Lord are Asuras. Very simple. So these two, the demoniac and divine forces, will always exist in the material world. And they will always be in conflict. Whether it is Satya Yuga, whether it is Treta Yuga, whether it is Dwapara, material world means these two forces will always be. And that's what we'll see all the Vedas, Puranas full of this conflict. Right? That's why even in the Bhagavad Gita, the 16th chapter is dedicated to Daiva Asura Sampada Vibhaga Yoga, the divine nature and the demoniac nature. What are the predominant characteristics? So this is an eternal thing, Prabhu. This will always be there. So what are we doing? What are we doing right now? In the Kali Yuga, the Sura and Asura is both within us. So we are trying to minimize the Asura and increase the Sura within us. Correct? We have demoniac qualities and we have little divine quality. We are trying to fan the divine and eliminate the demoniac. Correct? So Devasura Sangram is also happening in our own hearts. Kali Yuga. Right? You agree?
Yes.
Yeah. You wanted to say something?
No, Prabhu, I think I'm clear. Yeah.
Okay. There you go.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Yeah, Santanam Prabhu. Thank you, Tarun and Puja Madhav. Thank you. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Here in Prahlad is trying to teach Bhakti Yoga or Karma Yoga, Prabhuji?
He's teaching Bhakti Yoga because he says two things. His teachings are basically three. In steps, which is not different yogas, but he's trying to give spiritual education in the same way that we teach our Krishna consciousness. Point number one, materialistic life is miserable. Which means you are searching for happiness in the wrong place. You are searching for water in the desert. Okay. So second, so please pull yourself out from there, acquire spiritual knowledge. And point three, that the culmination of all of this is to develop love for the Supreme Lord and take full shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord through the process of devotional service. So, because, and we have mentioned this multiple times, detachment from matter and attachment to Krishna are two sides of the same coin of spiritual life. One cannot neglect one of the two and expect to make any tangible spiritual advancement. Correct? You remember this? I have been mentioning this point from day one when you came to the first class. Detachment from matter and attachment to Krishna are two sides of the coin. So that's why we speak on both aspects, because it is not possible to become properly attached to Krishna if we remain attached to matter. These are opposites. It's like saying, fire and water will coexist. No. Because the exploitative nature of the materialistic mentality to enjoy matter is absolutely counterproductive to the development of a service attitude which is needed to develop oneself in devotional service. They are pulling in opposite directions. So that is why we have don'ts and we have do's in devotional service. Those things which pull us down and take us towards materialistic way of life, they are don'ts. Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. Don't eat meat. Don't have illicit sex. Don't do gambling. Don't do illicit sex. Don't offend great souls. And so on and so forth. Don't be lapse in the performance of your duties, material duties also. And especially for us who are situated in the ashramas, varnashrams, until we have transcended, we cannot simply abandon our duties, but we should perform them with detachment, with dedication towards the Lord. And parallelly, we have to cultivate our attachment to the Lord. Like he says, here it is natural. Develop one's natural attraction to the Lord is actually our dearmost. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnoho Swaranam Pada Sevanam Archanam Vandanam Dasyam Saktavat. Chanting 16 rounds, studying Gita and Bhagavad, associating with devotees, eating Krishna Prasad, worshipping the deities, doing various services for the temple, for the spiritual master, serving the devotees, so many ways. We are cultivating our attachment. So these two have to go in parallel. Otherwise, we cannot make meaningful spiritual progress. So he's not talking about karma yoga because he is not even talking about renouncing the fruit of activities directly. He's not even going there. Prahlad is basically saying you are trying to find happiness in materialistic life. It is useless, hopeless. It is only going to lead you to misery. Don't waste your time there. Take shelter of the Lord. He's immediately going to the other end. He's not even going through a ladder process. Because he's at that platform. He's saying, it's so wonderful. Shelter. And he's saying, if you take full shelter of the Lord, Artha, Dharma, Kama, you don't even have to bother about. So of course, we all are not at that level that we can immediately come to that point that, we don't have to bother about, the following of our material duties to maintain our body, mind, and our, families. But the ultimate principle is, yes, if we are able to take that full shelter, सर्वधर्मान परित्यज्य मामेकं शरणं व्रज अहं त्वां सर्वपापेभ्यो मोक्षयिष्यामि मा शुचः. और अनन्यश्चिन्तयन्तो मां ये जना पर्युपासते तेषां नित्याभियुक्तानां योगक्षेमं वहाम्यहम्. Can we jump to this verse? Would Prahlad Maharaj, but at least because he's giving that small brief class, he's just telling this is where you need to reach. You cannot jump there suddenly, right? So we go through a process. So for us, we don't go through Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, and then Bhakti Yoga. We directly take to the process of Sadhana Bhakti. We perform material duties. We remain detached from sinful life. We do material duties with detachment and try to engage the fruits of our activities in the Lord's service and in living a Krishna conscious life. In that way, we purify our existence and simultaneously we cultivate our attachment to the Supreme Lord by taking shelter of the process of sadhana bhakti. That is our process. Correct? You see that? Detachment, attachment are going in. Okay? Does it answer your question?
Yes, Prabhuji. So we are following Bhakti Yoga. And,
yes.
Yes.
We are following sadhana bhakti right now. Yes. Yeah, so sadhana bhakti is a part of Bhakti Yoga. So there is sadhana bhakti, bhava bhakti, and prema bhakti. Correct? 3 steps. There is Vaidhi bhakti path and there is Raganuga bhakti path. On all 3, there is sadhana, bhava, and prema. So we are currently in Vaidhi sadhana. Okay?
Neophyte.
We are, yeah. That also is a big deal. Manushyanam sahasreshu kasyadhyatiste yatatam siddhanam kasyad mam veta. To be a devotee, even as a sadhana bhakti, to have strong faith, and practice devotional service with sincerity is a very big attainment, Prabhu. It may seem small when we compare with Mahabhagavat level, but it is a big deal when we compare it to the mass of living entities. Mass even of the human beings, what to speak of living entities. We spoke, right? How many ants are there? How many trees are there? Out of them, only 7 billion humans. And out of those 7 billion humans, how many are devotees of the Lord? And not just put Krishna's picture and do some agarbatti. Those who are cultivating sadhana bhakti. Very small, less than 0.001%. So it's a big deal.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
So we are very fortunate. So let's hold on to the good fortune. So what Prahlad was giving as knowledge to his friends, we are fortunate in Kali Yuga. Srila Prabhupada is giving that knowledge to all the living entities in Kali Yuga as the representative of Lord Chaitanya and giving us this knowledge. And he's making it even more simpler. Prahlad Maharaj told his father, give up everything, go to forest. Prabhupada is saying, no, don't go that far. I'll make it a bit more simpler for you. Kali Yuga, all that will be very difficult. Follow these 4 regulative principles. Chant 16 rounds. Associate regular with devotees. Eat Krishna Prasad. Don't commit offenses. Do your duties and act with detachment. You will achieve perfection at the end of this very life. So what instruction Prahlad gave in Satya Yuga to his friends is perfect. What instruction Prabhupada has given under the empowerment and blessings of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Krishna to us is also perfect. If we follow that perfectly, we will most certainly, through the blessings of the Lord, achieve the topmost perfection. So sometimes we may see this is different teaching, this is different teaching. When we deeply analyze, we'll see it's the same. In a sense, there is no difference. Acharyas at different times who are expertly understand the real nature of the situation. They know how to package the principles of detachment from matter and attachment to Krishna in a way that is suited for a particular age and a particular time. And they give that package to us. If we follow that package properly, the full blessings of the parampara and the Lord come along with it. Yeah. Sini Mataji, Hare Krishna. I see your hand up. You want to say something?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
I want to ask something. The natural tendency of the soul is to get connected to the Lord, isn't it? So
Yes.
soul is more happy when connected to the Lord. But some people do not believe in God, and some people likes to become a devotee fast. So is it based on our past karma or the 3 modes of nature?
Yeah, because of identification with the material body and one's long association with matter, one's pure consciousness, which is compared to pure water, becomes contaminated with the dirt of material existence. The water which is transparent can sometimes become brown or black, right? And one may wonder, right? Water is supposed to be transparent and clear and pure, but this water is so dirty. But essentially, what is the meaning of dirty water? Dirty water means temporarily some impurities have come. There's a process to remove the impurities so that the original nature of the water can be restored. And that is the process of Krishna consciousness. Yeah? So that is why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Cheto Darpana Marjanam Bhavam Mahadavagni Nirvapana. That through the process of chanting of the holy names and the process of devotional service, the consciousness, the chitta, which is the repository of all the various impressions that we have, desires, impressions, karma, everything, all that can be purified so that the true nature of the soul will come. We also last time discussed the example of iron filings. Iron filings are naturally attracted. Prahlad says, right, my heart is attracted helplessly towards Vishnu, just like iron is attracted to magnet. And Prabhupada says in the purport that if iron filings are covered with rust, then their attractive, the power that the magnet has to attract the iron is apparently reduced because of that obstruction of that rust which has gathered on the iron. So we need to remove that rust. So ultimately, it is not because of karma. Of course, in one sense, our real identity is covered based on one's association with the modes. But if one is fortunate to associate with devotees of the Lord, even if one has long associated with matter, the power of association can trigger one's attraction to the Lord, because the spiritual energy that comes through a devotee who is connected to the proper parampara, the mercy that flows from there has the power, even in a polluted heart, ignite that spark, to rekindle that attraction towards the Lord, even in the conditioned state. Of course, one still has to then work towards purifying the contamination so that that pure state of consciousness can develop and blossom properly. But it is possible. It is possible for a sinful person to become a devotee. It is not necessary that only a pious person can become a devotee. An impious person can also become fortunate by receiving the seed of devotional service. So whoever is receptive can receive, but the more pure we are, the easier it becomes for us to follow the principles of bhakti. Otherwise, it becomes difficult. If one's life is very unregulated, if one's life is full of sinful activities, even if somehow one becomes fortunate to have triggered a little attraction towards the Lord, continue to cultivate it by following the principles of bhakti yoga become very difficult for a sinful person. So the best combination is to have the association of devotees and at the same time not be sinful. But ultimately, good fortune comes by coming in contact with devotee, because even no matter how pure one is in terms of his material living, unless one receives the blessing of the Lord's devotee and becomes fortunate to receive the seed of devotional service, one's real progress in terms of one's attraction and the development of one's relationship with the Lord will not commence. No matter how pious one is. Even if one performs 100 Ashwamedha Yajnas, it doesn't result in development of devotion to the Lord, if it is done with a spirit of fruitive activity. But if one attends one Bhagavatam class with an open heart and hears from a great soul, like Prahlad, or a soul who's connected in the parampara, then there is a very wonderful opportunity, a chance, somewhere kindle that inner spirit. Yeah? Does that help you?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Yeah. So that's why we do not, when we preach Krishna consciousness, never try to judge people in terms of their external situations. We try to think, oh, this person is very pious, he'll become a devotee. This person is very sinful, he will never become a devotee. It doesn't work like that. Of course, if a pious person gets attracted to the Lord, it is much easier for the pious person to practice devotional service. For a sinful person, it is much more difficult to practice. But where the trigger will happen, that is not dependent on one's material situation. That is based on the factors of his past devotional sukritis and the power of mercy that he receives. So at a very practical level, let us not exclude anyone by saying that this is a hopeless character. We have come across, I remember myself and a friend of mine, I was just speaking to him just yesterday from Mumbai. My friends from school, we went and he said, come with me, let's preach to somebody. Then we went to his home and then I was speaking to that person. We were speaking and, he wanted me to preach to him, and he had long hair and he was connected to film industry. He had acted in a movie as Amitabh Bachchan's small younger character. His sister is a film actress, and this person told me that this particular person, he was a young boy at that time, our age only. So he organizes rave parties. I don't know whether you know what are rave parties, but okay, I don't want to go into that subject, but rave party and I was at that time thinking, Why did he bring me to preach to him? It will be such a waste of time. What is the hope? Isko मैं क्या प्रचार करूं? And after looking at him, I was thinking, अरे यार. But to cut a long story short, this person not only became a devotee, he became a brahmachari. He renounced everything and joined the ashram and shaved his head and became a sadhu. Gave up all his nonsense. Name is Madhavendra Puri Das. So you see, I was thinking, I shouldn't have materially assessed. What is the spiritual potential of an individual? It's hard. It's hard to assess. It's hard to assess. So anyway, all I'm trying to tell you is that while we may philosophically know all these things, we don't know who will become, who will not become. So, our nature should be to distribute to everyone. If somebody is actively resisting, then we don't preach to him. Especially if they're offensive to the Lord, then we don't bother them, because we don't want them to create ill fortune for themselves by being offensive. And we don't want to be the part of hearing that offense to the Lord. But otherwise, we are open to try to preach to anyone and everyone. In fact, sometimes the most miserable and sinful persons are suffering so much that their hearts are most open to receiving transcendental wisdom. It's very difficult to know. Okay, sorry, I think I took a lot of time. Hopefully that helps a bit. So, of course, as always, just like Prahlad Maharaj said, my appeal to all of you is, please, you all also learn this subject and teach to others. That is the system of our parampara. My desire is to not always keep you students, but also to make you teachers. Then you create another set of teachers, so on and so forth. That is the parampara system. That's what Prabhupada told his disciples told us, and we are telling you. So go on. Okay. Thank you. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam. I'll see you all. Haribol, Suresh Prabhu. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
I will see you all. Yes. Jnana Chandranji. Hare Krishna. Anand Sundari Mataji, Archana ji, Leela Mataji, Sarvalakshmi Mataji, Sridevi ji, Haribol. Sridevi Mataji makes special effort from her dental clinic. Listen, so Krishna will give her special blessings to become transcendental. From dental to transcendental. Hari Hari. Thank you. Sini ji, thank you so much. Leela Mataji and family. Hari Hari. Suraj, Shalini, Amit Prabhu, Priya Mataji, Sarva Lakshmi ji, Sachi Prema Mataji, Anand Sundari Mataji. Thank you all very much. I'll see you on Tuesday. I think next week there is Ekadashi Tithi, I think. 26th, if I'm not wrong. 26th, right? Yeah, 26th. Yeah. So I'll remind you again on, a day earlier, on Tuesday also.